She was married for 3 years, and her husband never even looked her in the eye. But the moment another man kissed her hand, everything exploded. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, would you stay or would you walk away? Let's begin. 3 years of marriage, and Evelyn could count their meaningful conversations on one hand. She set his coffee cup down just as his polished shoes clicked against the kitchen floor. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She had learned his preferences through observation, not conversation. He took the cup without acknowledgement, scrolled through his phone, and left for Cade Industries without a word. Evelyn remained at the kitchen island, eating her toast in silence, wondering how her life had become this beautiful, suffocating cage. The memories of how she ended up here still stung like fresh wounds. 3 years ago, she had been Evelyn Hartley, a bright business graduate with dreams of changing the world. Then her father's construction company collapsed under the weight of bad investments and worse partnerships. The debt was staggering enough to destroy 3 generations of her family's modest wealth. Margaret Hartley had made the arrangement with tears in her eyes and desperation in her voice. The Cade family needed their heir married to someone respectable, quiet, and manageable. Evelyn's family needed salvation from financial ruin. It was business, pure and simple. Nathan had been coldly professional during their first meeting, explaining the terms like a merger agreement. She would be his wife in name, attend necessary social functions, and maintain the appearance of a stable marriage. In return, her family's debts would disappear, and she would want for nothing material. What she hadn't expected was how thoroughly he would ignore her existence. Evelyn finished her breakfast and retreated to the garden, her sanctuary in this loveless mansion. She tended to roses that bloomed more beautifully than her marriage, finding solace in nurturing something that actually responded to her care. The vibration of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Nathan's name appeared on the screen, unusual, since he never called during business hours. "Hello," she answered, her voice careful and neutral. "Evelyn," his deep voice carried its usual chill. "I need you to attend an event with me tonight." She blinked, startled. In 3 years, she had never appeared publicly as his wife. What kind of event? Business. Gala. International investors. 7 o'clock. His tone suggested this was a command, not a request. Why now? The question escaped before she could stop it. A business reason. You're my wife. It's time you acted like it. The line went dead, leaving Evelyn staring at her phone in shock. After 3 years of being invisible, why did he suddenly need her visible? That evening, Evelyn stood before her closet, feeling lost. She owned beautiful clothes. Nathan's money ensured she lacked nothing material, but she had nowhere to wear them. Finally, she chose a deep emerald dress that brought out her green eyes, something she had bought in a moment of optimism that had long since faded. At exactly 7, she descended the stairs to find Nathan waiting in the foyer. He looked devastating in his black tuxedo, every inch the powerful billionaire CEO. When he saw her, something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe even appreciation, but it vanished so quickly she thought she imagined it. "You look acceptable," he said, offering his arm with mechanical courtesy. Acceptable. Evelyn swallowed the hurt and placed her hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of his body through the expensive fabric. It was the first time they had touched in months. The Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Evelyn felt like an actress playing a role she hadn't rehearsed. Nathan's hand rested on the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, introducing her with practiced efficiency. "My wife, Evelyn," he would say, his voice giving nothing away. Most people smiled politely and moved on, but Evelyn noticed how the women looked at Nathan with obvious interest, and how the men's eyes lingered on her with appreciation. She began to understand why Nathan had brought her. She was beautiful arm candy, proof of his desirability and stability. Then she met Julian Monroe. He was different from the others, warm brown eyes, genuine smile, and an easy confidence that didn't seem predatory. When Nathan introduced them, Julian took her hand and held it a moment longer than necessary. "Mrs. Cade," Julian said, his British accent adding charm to his words. "Nathan's been hiding you away. I can see why. If I had a wife this beautiful, I'd want to keep her to myself too." Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. When was the last time someone had complimented her so directly? Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Julian is expanding his operations into South America, Nathan explained, his voice carefully neutral. He's looking for local expertise. How fascinating, Evelyn said, surprised by her own interest. What kind of business? Sustainable development projects, Julian replied, his eyes lighting up. Ecotourism, renewable energy, I believe business should benefit communities, not exploit them. As Julian talked about his work, Evelyn found herself genuinely engaged for the first time in years. Here was someone who saw business as more than profit margins and market dominance. You seem very knowledgeable about international markets, Julian observed. Do you work in the field? Evelyn felt Nathan's hand tighten on her back, a warning. I studied international business, but I don't work, she replied carefully. What a waste, Julian said, and Evelyn's heart fluttered at the genuine regret in his voice. Someone with your intelligence should be making a difference in the world. Before Nathan could respond, Julian was pulled away by another investor, but not before slipping Evelyn his business card. I'd love to continue our conversation sometime, he said with a smile that made her feel truly seen for the first time in 3 years. The drive home was tense with unspoken words. Nathan's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, his jaw set in a hard line. Evelyn stared out the window, Julian's card hidden in her purse like a secret. Interesting evening, she finally said, testing the waters. Monroe seemed quite taken with you, Nathan replied, his voice dangerously quiet. Evelyn turned to study his profile. Is that a problem? You're my wife on paper, she shot back, surprised by her own boldness. Nathan pulled into their driveway and cut the engine. In the sudden silence, Evelyn could hear her own heartbeat. He turned to face her, his gray eyes intense in the dim light. You are my wife, Evelyn, in every way that matters. Really? She challenged. When did you decide that? Because for 3 years, I've been nothing more than an expensive decoration in your perfect life. Something shifted in Nathan's expression, a crack in his icy composure. For a moment, Evelyn thought she saw something vulnerable beneath the surface, but then his mask slipped back into place. Things change, he said simply. Evelyn laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yes, they do, but sometimes it's too late. She got out of the car and walked into the house, leaving Nathan sitting alone in the darkness, finally forced to confront what his neglect might cost him. That night, Evelyn lay in her separate bedroom, Julian's business card on her nightstand. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like a woman worth wanting, and the feeling was both terrifying and intoxicating. Down the hall, Nathan paced in his study, replaying every moment of the evening. The way Julian had looked at Evelyn, the way she had smiled in response, the way she had challenged him in the car. It all pointed to one terrible truth. He was losing her and hadn't even realized she was his to lose. The game had changed, and Nathan Cade was no longer sure he knew the rules. Evelyn woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen below. Strange. Nathan always left before she stirred. Curiosity drew her downstairs, where she found a sight that stopped her cold. Nathan stood at the stove, still in his silk pajama pants and white t-shirt, flipping pancakes with surprising skill. The kitchen island was set for 2, complete with fresh orange juice and coffee that smelled like heaven. Good morning, he said without turning around, his voice softer than she'd heard in years. Evelyn remained frozen in the doorway, wearing nothing but her silk nightgown and confusion. What's happening? Breakfast. He turned, and she caught her breath. Without his armor of expensive suits, Nathan looked younger, more human. His dark hair was tousled, and there was something vulnerable in his gray eyes. I thought we should eat together. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Nathan set down the spatula and faced her fully. Because I've been an ass for 3 years, and I'm tired of pretending you don't exist. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. What changed? Last night, watching Monroe look at you like. Nathan's jaw clenched. Like you were something precious, something worth treasuring. It made me realize I've been blind. Evelyn moved cautiously to the island, accepting the plate he offered. The pancakes were perfect, golden and fluffy. "This doesn't erase 3 years of indifference," she said quietly. "I know." Nathan sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. "But I'm hoping it's a start." They ate in charged silence. Evelyn was acutely aware of how the morning light caught the silver threads in Nathan's dark hair, how his strong hands moved as he cut his food, how his eyes kept drifting to her mouth when she spoke. "I called Monroe this morning," Nathan said suddenly. Evelyn's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Why?" "To decline his proposal for partnership." Nathan's voice was carefully controlled. "I told him Cade Industries wasn't interested in his projects." "That's not your decision to make for me," Evelyn said, anger flaring. "You're right." Nathan set down his fork. "That's why I'm offering you something better." "Better? How about work with me at Cade Industries? I need someone with your expertise for our Latin American expansion." Evelyn stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership, professional and," Nathan hesitated, "personal, if you'll have it." Before Evelyn could respond, her phone buzzed. Julian Monroe's name appeared on the screen. Nathan's eyes darkened as she answered. "Evelyn, darling." Julian's warm voice filled the space between them. "I hope you slept well. I've been thinking about our conversation last night." "Julian, hello." Evelyn was hyper-aware of Nathan, watching her every expression. "I have a proposition for you. Dinner tonight to discuss the position I mentioned. I think you'd be perfect for my team." Evelyn looked at Nathan, whose knuckles had gone white around his coffee cup. Something reckless stirred in her chest. "I'd love to," she said, maintaining eye contact with her husband. Nathan's face went stone cold. The moment she hung up, he stood abruptly. "So that's your answer," he said, his voice like ice. "You had 3 years to make me an offer," Evelyn replied, standing to face him. "I'm not going to drop everything just because you've suddenly decided I exist. This isn't about business, and we both know it." Nathan stepped closer, and Evelyn caught the scent of his cologne, mixed with something purely masculine. "He wants you. So what if he does?" Evelyn lifted her chin defiantly. "At least someone does." The words hung between them like a challenge. Nathan's eyes blazed with something primitive and dangerous. "You think I don't want you?" His voice dropped to a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "You've never shown it," Evelyn breathed. But she didn't step back when he moved closer. "I've been a fool." Nathan's hand rose to touch her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "But I want you, Evelyn. I've wanted you from the moment I saw you in that emerald dress last night, maybe before that, and I was just too stubborn to admit it." Evelyn's breath caught. "Nathan, don't go to dinner with him," Nathan said, his forehead almost touching hers. "Stay here. Let me show you what kind of husband I can really be." For a moment, Evelyn wavered, the heat radiating from Nathan's body, the intensity in his eyes, the way his thumb was still stroking her cheek. It was everything she dreamed of for 3 years. Then reality crashed back. "One morning of pancakes doesn't erase 3 years of neglect," she said, stepping back. "I'm going to dinner with Julian." Nathan's hand dropped, and his expression hardened. "Fine, but when you come home tonight, we're going to finish this conversation." It wasn't a request. That evening, Evelyn chose her outfit carefully, a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves and made her feel powerful. Julian took her to an intimate French restaurant where candlelight danced across their table. "You look absolutely stunning," Julian said, taking her hand across the table. "Blue is definitely your color." Evelyn smiled, trying to ignore the way her skin prickled with awareness when he touched her. It felt wrong, somehow, like a betrayal of something she couldn't name. "Tell me about this position," she said, steering the conversation to safer ground. Julian's eyes lit up. "I need someone to oversee our South American operations, someone with your education and intuition. The salary would be more than generous, and you'd have complete autonomy." It was everything Evelyn had dreamed of: meaningful work, financial independence, respect for her abilities. So why did it feel hollow? There's something else, Julian said, his voice dropping. I have to be honest with you, Evelyn. This isn't just about business. Evelyn's stomach clenched. Julian, I know you're married, but what kind of marriage is it, really? You deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. Come with me to Argentina next month. See what life could be like. Evelyn stared at their joined hands, her mind racing. Julian was offering her everything: career, adventure, a man who actually wanted her. It should have been an easy choice, but all she could think about was Nathan's thumb tracing her cheek that morning, the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he'd said her name like a prayer. I need time to think, she said finally. Julian nodded, though disappointment flickered across his face. Of course, but don't take too long. Some opportunities don't wait. When Julian dropped her off at home, Evelyn found all the lights off except one, Nathan's study. She climbed the stairs slowly, her heart pounding with each step. The study door was open. Nathan sat behind his desk, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loose and sleeves rolled up. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, his gray eyes unreadable. How was dinner? He asked quietly. Educational, Evelyn replied, stepping into the room. Did he make you an offer? Evelyn nodded. A good one. Job in South America, complete independence. Something flickered across Nathan's face. And I told him I'd think about it. Nathan stood slowly, moving around the desk to face her. What's to think about? It's everything you've wanted. Is it? Evelyn searched his face. I thought I knew what I wanted, but today changed things. How? Evelyn took a shaky breath. You changed things, pancakes and coffee, and looking at me like I matter. Nathan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. You do matter, more than I ever realized. Prove it, Evelyn whispered. The challenge hung between them like a lit fuse. Nathan's eyes darkened, and when he reached for her this time, there was nothing hesitant about his touch. His hands framed her face as he kissed her, and Evelyn felt 3 years of loneliness and hunger pour into that kiss. She melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he backed her against the wall. God, Evelyn, Nathan groaned against her lips. I've been such a fool. Yes, you have, she breathed. But her hands were already working at the buttons of his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Don't take the job, he said quietly. Stay here, work with me. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for the last 3 years. Evelyn looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been searching for: desire, regret, hope, and something that might have been love. Ask me properly, she said. Nathan's hand slid down to her waist, pulling her closer. Evelyn Hartley Cade, will you give your husband a second chance? Will you let me love you the way you deserve to be loved? The words she'd waited 3 years to hear finally came, and Evelyn realized she had already made her choice the moment he kissed her. Yes, she whispered and sealed her answer with a kiss that tasted like new beginnings. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in the gleaming conference room of Cade Industries, presenting quarterly projections to a room full of executives who hung on her every word. The shy, invisible wife had transformed into a confident businesswoman who commanded respect through intelligence and grace. The Argentine project exceeded expectations by 30%, she concluded, her voice steady and authoritative. I recommend we expand operations to Chile and Peru within the next fiscal year. Applause filled the room. Nathan, seated at the head of the table, watched his wife with undisguised pride and something much deeper. When their eyes met across the polished mahogany, heat flickered between them like a shared secret. Excellent work, Mrs. Cade, said Daniel Ewan, the head of international operations. Your strategy has revolutionized our Latin American presence. As the meeting dispersed, Nathan lingered behind, waiting until they were alone. Then he crossed the room to where Evelyn was gathering her papers, his movements predatory and purposeful. "Have I mentioned how incredibly sexy you are when you're being brilliant?" he murmured, his hands settling on her waist from behind. Evelyn leaned back against his chest, savoring the solid warmth of him. "Only about a dozen times today. Not nearly enough." Nathan's lips found the sensitive spot behind her ear, making her shiver. "I have something for you." He produced a small velvet box that made Evelyn's breath catch. Inside nestled a stunning emerald ring, the stone the exact shade of the dress she'd worn to their first public appearance together. "Nathan, it's beautiful, but what's the occasion?" "6 months since you chose to stay. 6 months since we started over." His voice was rough with emotion. "I wanted to mark the day we really became husband and wife." Evelyn turned in his arms, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You remember the exact date?" "I remember everything about that night. The way you looked in that blue dress, the way you challenged me, the way you kissed me like you were claiming me." Nathan slipped the ring onto her right hand. "I remember falling in love with my own wife." The words still had the power to steal her breath. Evelyn had heard them before, whispered in their bed during passionate nights, murmured over morning coffee, declared during heated arguments that ended in even more heated reconciliations. But they never failed to make her heart race. "I love you too," she said, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted like promise and desire. They might have stayed like that indefinitely if Evelyn's assistant hadn't knocked on the conference room door. "Mrs. Cade, there's a Julian Monroe here to see you. He says it's urgent." Evelyn felt Nathan's body tense against hers. Julian had tried contacting her several times over the past 6 months, but she'd never responded. What could be urgent enough to bring him here? They found Julian waiting in the lobby, his usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. When he saw them enter together, Nathan's arm possessively around Evelyn's waist, his face fell. "Evelyn," he said, "thank you for seeing me." Julian's eyes took in her transformed appearance, the confidence in her posture, the glow in her cheeks, the obvious intimacy between her and Nathan. "You look happy." "I am," Evelyn said simply. "What can I do for you, Julian?" "I'm in trouble." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "The Argentine project collapsed. I made some bad investments, trusted the wrong people. I'm facing bankruptcy, possibly criminal charges." Nathan's arm tightened around Evelyn, and she could feel the tension radiating from him. "What does this have to do with my wife?" Julian's eyes fixed on Evelyn with desperate hope. "I need someone with your expertise to help salvage what's left. You know the markets, you have the contacts. Now I'll sign over 40% of the company if you'll help me rebuild." It was a generous offer, more generous than Julian could afford. Evelyn studied his face, seeing the desperation there, the genuine fear of losing everything he'd built. "Julian, I'm flattered, but I know you're happy." Julian interrupted. "I can see it. But this is your chance to build something of your own, to be more than just Nathan Cade's wife." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Evelyn felt Nathan's body go rigid beside her, but when she looked up at him, she saw something different than the possessive jealousy of months before. He was waiting, trusting her to make her own choice. "You're right," Evelyn said finally, and she felt Nathan's sharp intake of breath. "I could build something of my own, but I already have." She gestured around the Cade Industries lobby, then looked at Nathan with love shining in her eyes. "This company, this marriage, this life, I'm not just Nathan's wife anymore. I'm his partner in every sense of the word. We built this together." Julian's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I see. I'm sorry I bothered you." "Wait." Evelyn's voice stopped him at the door. "I can't help you personally, but I know someone who might be interested in your proposition. Daniel Ewan has been looking for expansion opportunities." Hope flickered back to life in Julian's eyes. "You do that for me after everything?" Evelyn smiled. "You helped me realize my own worth, Julian, even if it wasn't in the way you intended." After Julian left, Nathan pulled Evelyn into his arms right there in the lobby, not caring who saw. "I thought I was going to lose you again," he admitted against her hair. Never, Evelyn said fiercely. I'm exactly where I belong. That night, they celebrated in the privacy of their home, not in the cold mansion where they'd lived as strangers, but in a warm space filled with laughter and love. Evelyn had redecorated, softening the harsh edges with color and life just as she'd softened Nathan's heart. They made love with the passion that had grown stronger with each passing month, each touch a promise, each kiss a declaration. Afterward, lying tangled in their bed, not separate rooms, Evelyn traced patterns on Nathan's chest while he played with her hair. Do you ever regret it? Nathan asked quietly. Staying? Giving up that independence? Evelyn propped herself up to look at him, her emerald ring catching the moonlight. Do you know what real independence is? Tell me. It's choosing to share your life with someone who sees all of you. The brilliant businesswoman, the woman who tends roses, the woman who cries at romantic movies, the woman who challenges you to be better. Evelyn's voice grew soft with emotion. It's being loved for exactly who you are. Nathan's hand cupped her face with infinite tenderness. And do you feel loved, Mrs. Cade? Completely, utterly. Desperately, Evelyn whispered, sealing the words with a kiss that promised forever. Good, Nathan murmured against her lips, because I plan to spend every day for the rest of our lives proving it to you. 3 years of silence had become a lifetime of conversation. 3 years of distance had become an intimacy so deep it took Evelyn's breath away. And a marriage of convenience had become the greatest love story she could have imagined. And they lived passionately, completely, and utterly in love ever after.